Well, Reno High School, Unit 4. We'd like you to help us understand. Oh, can't start without introducing Doctor.
Well, you got to introduce yourself.
Just wanted you to hear from Reno High School. I'm David Hardy. I'm the District Court Judge here in Washington, accompanied by 3 colleagues. Let me have them introduce themselves.
I'm Alan Gertler. I'm the Interim Vice President for Research at the Desert Research Institute.
I'm Andrew Linfield, the Regional Representative for Seneca BDO.
Bill Reed with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Well, we want to hear from you, and we would like to know how and why presidential power expanded since the ratification of the Constitution. How have wars, emergencies, and the media contributed to the expansion of presidential powers? How have the other branches of government responded to the expansion of presidential power? Do you think they have been so adequate?
Very
well.
In his speech to the Senate in 1834, President Andrew Jackson stated, "It was settled by the Constitution, the laws, and the whole practice of government that the entire executive power is vested in the President of the United States." By the time Jackson gave the speech, the precedent set by George Washington of an energetic but limited president was starting to erode. During Thomas Jefferson's 1800 campaign, his main focus was to uphold the ideas of the founders. But even the noble Jefferson realized the limitations of the Constitution's vague enumerated powers once in office, when he purchased Louisiana and enforced the embargo of 1807.
By 1834, Andrew Jackson had become a key player in the expanded executive. He used his veto authority more than all of his predecessors combined. He also refused to support the Second Bank of the United States, impounding federal funds using his power as chief executive. Federal 69 made it clear that the president would not be able to raise and regulate fleets and army by his own authority. However, during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln independently raised the blockade against Southern ports, defying the intentions of the framers.
During World War II, Franklin Roosevelt bypassed his constitutional obligation in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution when he made executive agreements with Joseph Stalin and Winston Churchill without the consent of the Senate. Due to the tensions of the Cold War and the increased military presence of communist powers in Vietnam, Lyndon B. Johnson continued the expansion of power when Congress surrendered its authority in the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Johnson was able to pursue and escalate conflict in Vietnam without a declaration of war.
During the Great Depression, presidential power expanded yet again with Franklin Roosevelt's use of executive orders. In his second day in office, FDR issued an executive order closing the nation's banks. He established many New Deal programs, like the Works Progress Administration, without the approval of Congress. Following the emergency of 9/11, Americans looked to the president to react forcefully. George W. Bush immediately grounded air traffic, raised the army, and shut down financial markets. 3 months later, he effectively declared war on Afghanistan with an executive order.
Time Magazine's editor-in-chief, Fareed Zakaria, has noted that the media creates a perception of the president that the president holds sovereignty along with Congress, though the framers envisioned Congress holding all the power. FDR exploited this when he attempted to appoint 6 new justices to the Supreme Court. Although met with congressional disapproval, he tried to win the favor of the public through his fireside chats. Today, news networks such as MSNBC and Fox News further the perception of presidential power. Critics of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, blame it on the president and ignore the fact that Congress created, passed, and funded it.
At times, both Congress and the courts have tried to reel in presidential expansion. Abraham Lincoln was checked by the judicial branch during the Civil War in the Supreme Court cases Ex parte Milligan and Ex parte Merritt, after he unilaterally declared martial law and suspended habeas corpus. During the Watergate scandal, the Supreme Court attempted to check the president in U.S. v. Nixon by revoking most of his executive privileges. However, as Justice Jackson had earlier noted, Youngstown Tu Cho v. Sawyer, "I have no illusion that any decision by this court can keep power in the hands of Congress. Only Congress itself can prevent the power from slipping through its fingers." For Nixon, Congress reacted adequately by initiating the process of impeachment, forcing him to resign.
However, throughout history, Congress rarely acts adequately to address the rise of the presidency. A good example of this is the War Powers Resolution of 1973. This was Congress's first attempt to check abuses of power after the Vietnam War. However, it's a non-binding resolution and has never been invoked. Congress still maintains a few checks. One of its most effective is the power to control the funds the president needs to enforce his laws. Another is to refuse to pass the president's legislative agenda. Our current Congress has passed nearly 4.5 times fewer laws than even the Do-Nothing Congress under President Aaron Trudeau.
In Federalist 70, Hamilton wrote, "Energy in the executive is a leading character in the definition of a good government. This energy has grown beyond even Hamilton's expectations. With more conflicts, emergencies, media coverage, presidents have pushed this to the extreme and advanced the limits of his power."
Thank you.
All right, so we'll have a few follow-up questions. You have to begin.
You know, mentioned executive orders, what they are, some applications of them. Why do you think the use of executive orders has increased recently?
Specifically, actually just yesterday, due to the unfortunate events, President Obama issued an executive order asking that all flags be lowered at half-mast until Tuesday. And I think, like we said in our testimony, the increasing amount of emergencies that are occurring in our country have made the use of executive order increase as well.
On top of that, the fact that there's a very large congressional gridlock in Congress, it makes it very difficult for the legislative branch to actually pass things. So the executive order is a good way for the president to bypass that, to do things that he feels need to be done immediately.
In Federalist 62, Publius stated that no laws or regulations can be passed without first a concurrence of the majority of the people and then of a majority of the states. And like he said, like Jack said about the gridlock, they have not been able to come to an agreement. Therefore, the president has to take some matters into his own.
Most of President Obama's new executive agreements are rather innocuous. We can look at the instance of Hurricane Sandy, where one of his executive agreements was to create a task force to help clean up with that. It's not some of the unfortunate executive agreements that we've seen in the past with presidents like FDR and back to Lincoln.
In your testimony, you indicated clearly that Congress has not expressed the authority to place checks on the presidents, and you supported those with some pretty compelling evidence. Can you think of other examples that Congress, where Congress has or where they can express their authority to check powers of presidents?
Well, one key example has to be the issue of foreign policy. Congress has not done a very good job of reassuring its dominance over the president that is codified in the Constitution. So one thing they can do is actually enforce the War Powers Resolution of 1973 and try and create some more equitable changes between the president and Congress.
Another example of when Congress has acted adequately is when they they repealed or took back the vetoes of President Johnson, and then they tried to impeach him on the Tenure of Office Act.
I want to return to this executive power real quick, because you said that because of gridlock, the president should, I believe, should exercise his authority to override what isn't happening in Congress. I want to be certain that I understand that that's a good thing. And if so, help me understand the structural dynamic of our country, of the branches, and why the president should be able to override. Why is that good, just because of
Well, it can be both a good and bad thing. The president occasionally makes actions that just need to happen in terms of expediency, because Congress isn't meeting or won't be able to vote quickly enough, like what's happening with Hurricane Sandy. But in other instances, it is absolutely the domain of Congress to deal with it. Things like foreign policy that we talked about, and even economic problems, truly lie with Congress, given to them with the powers of Article 1, Section 8, whereas the president is more there to execute the laws faithfully.
Obviously, it is ideal to have Congress being the majority, having majority of the power and making the most actions. But when they are so stuck with just staying on party lines and not actually compromising to accomplish something, the president should step in to actually help them progress and move on and help the country when we're stuck like this.
However, I would like to disagree, because I think that the founders created the legislative branch to make laws, and the president's job is to enforce these laws. So I would have to disagree, and I think that the president should not step in, even though Congress is in gridlock.
You talked about Congress limiting powers of the president. I think you talked about the Supreme Court to some extent, mentioned that, I believe. Do you think that just raw public opinion can have an effect on
effect on President Power, we perceive the president as the head of our government. In Thomas Cronin's Paradox of American Presidency, he stated that we give so much power to the president, we perceive them as the head of our government, so therefore the president may feel entitled to take this power.
It's like we mentioned in our testimony, the editor-in-chief of Time magazine, Fareed Zakaria, writes a lot about this, how people just seem to see the president as the Congress today, which is completely different from what the founders of our Constitution had.
Also, the president can be influenced by his EOP, which is his Executive Office of the President, or Administration of the President, and that was created or approved by Congress in 1939.
So change quickly to foreign affairs. Is there a power struggle between Congress and the president? Help me understand their respective powers regarding foreign.
There's a very large power struggle between Congress and the president in regards to foreign affairs. For example, the president is chief of the military. However, Congress has the ability to declare war and regulate the military. So this power between the chief and the regulation of the military was given ultimately to the president in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution.
Well, unfortunately, we are finished. Well done.
Obviously, really well prepared. We worked hard at it. I want to think we obviously started off with a nice stuff. You then told the story. You very logically through it. One of the things that you did that I really, that surprised me, for example, you started talking about executive power and mentioned FDR, World War II, and I figured, okay, we're going to go to the Japanese internment camps. But you surprised me. You then went to, you didn't say go, but you basically went to those agreements and things like that. And I think you did that, that was one of the strengths of your presentation. You didn't necessarily take the standard example. You often pulled something else out, and I thought that was very well done, the way that you did that, and the way that you embellished it. One of the things that you also did that was a little different was you seem to be more critical of Congress rather than the president when it comes to the presidential powers. In other words, in a lot of your arguments, given that way, you gave specifics, like how many laws have passed this Congress versus the do-nothing Congress. So you really back things up with facts. I think that was, that was really well done. Overall, I'm trying to think of something where I have to be critical, because again, you guys are at that top level, and it's that little difference of what's going to push you, in the next round versus somebody else. Like how, what's going to set you apart. You offer different opinions. You didn't always agree with each other. That's good. That's strange. In some cases, I the only thing I can say that maybe to think about a little more is when you have your opinions, really make sure that you're giving sufficient facts behind them to justify those. But for the most part, but not always. I think sometimes it was missing, and that would be maybe one little piece of advice. But otherwise, good job.
I'd like to add, I think you guys did very well. Your arguments were very well reasoned. Your positions were very well established, and you knew what your positions on them were. You made it clear to us where you stood, and then you backed them up with facts and the examples that you offered to us. And I even learned something regarding the Congress of today and the Congress of Truman. So I very much enjoyed those little tidbits that aren't in textbooks, aren't things that are very well known. Just one of the critiques that I do have is you jumped around historically a lot, and I don't know if you were organizing it by war examples and economic examples. It seemed as though they kind of fell into those categories, but going from Lincoln to FDR to Roosevelt, getting back and forth, it can be somewhat confusing and then at the beginning, you offered the, the position that Washington had on the executive power. And then you said it began to erode, I believe you said under Lincoln, but then you jumped back and said that Roosevelt also. So you might want to just be careful some of those little nuances that may often contradict the evidence of the position that you took. So, but other than that, I think you're doing an awesome job. The work that you've done in the preparation for the interview.
I don't have any specific criticisms at all. I see there's a video camera up there, and I suppose it's taping. You're probably already doing it, but I think there's some value in watching your presentation. It's sort of hard to do sometimes, but I think you, by watching it, you can sort of pick up on mannerisms and style points. And very good job.
Well, I agree with my colleagues that this is a very strong team, and the differences between first and second and third, whether here or in other state and national competitions, differences are very subtle. And I picked up on the same thing that Dr. Gertler picked up on. And so for two of us, maybe it's something to remember, and that is that I really liked your less known but equally applicable examples. 10 out of 10 schools are going to tell us about Lincoln during the Civil War and about FDR. You did, and maybe FDR just a touch too much, although he may be worthy of it because of how expansive he viewed presidential power. But you pulled from historical places other examples, and I enjoyed that. In fact, my notes are cryptic, but at one point during the presentation I wrote, less known equals I like. Somewhere else I wrote, I liked obscure examples. Just said. I do agree with Mr. Lingenfelter that there was a little incoherence in the analytical organization. You're going to different points. For me, they connected, but along the way, I started wondering how are they going to connect. And so, just think of that as you review your prepared remarks. You're going to win or lose based upon the second phase. You cannot have any errors on this first part because you know what the answer, the question is. So you have an opportunity to prepare the answer outside of this intimidating environment. Make sure it's dead on, and the way you do that, I think, is to have other people help you review its analytical chronology, and also go back to the question asked. Make sure you tell us enough about the media. And I wanted to hear a little bit more on that. I also want to just comment upon the nonverbal communication, which I thought was good. There's a balance between being overly prepared. This is a very intimidating environment. And so you'll see some people just like autotrons, that they don't move. They say the exact same thing when they introduce, and they conceal their personality. And you didn't do that. I want you to know that you were authentic. There was some sincerity from the beginning through the end, and I think that's good. Don't let your coach, Mr. Clark, I believe, don't let him suppress that, because we want to see individuals who are passionate. We don't want to see autotrons. I want to be surprised. The winning team was surprised by its unpredictability, because so many teams will be on the exact same platform. So keep what you're doing with those obscure references, and also be careful that when you respond to the questions during the second phase, that your answers are really responsive. Now, we all prepare what we want to say before we have to say it, whether it's in front of a classroom or in a courtroom. We
I
have
don't know
our
what I'm going to say.
Watch the talking point shows on Sunday morning, those news programs, and you'll learn what not to do. Because these people will come, and regardless of the question asked, the guests will answer what they've prepared. And it's frustrating, because what I really want as a viewer is the answer to the question asked. And it's tricky sometimes because you want to show that you've prepared, you want to find some place to refer to Cicero, make sure that you're responsive to those questions, because I think the judges will sense when you're fluffing them. And so, that's all I have. I wish I had more time. The mark of the good team is that we want to keep going. I actually want to keep going.
And I think we're a lot more critical, only because you are so good.
Oh, yes.
So we're trying to make sure that, what are these little fine points to really, help polish what you're doing to go to the top, as opposed to other ones. So don't take it that, we're just being critical of what you did. It's constructive, and it's meant to be that way.